Mr. Evangelidis, you're a Republican, correct?
Yes, sir.
What's your view on privatization of jails?
Well, I mean, that's a complicated question in the sense of how I did. No, I mean, in Massachusetts here, I mean, oh, I'm sorry. He asked me how I said a privatization of jails. And I honestly have not studied certain states that do them, so I'm not going to speak on the issue itself. I looked at the situation in Massachusetts, and I wouldn't be looking to privatize our system right now, as it is. I'm not supporting that here in Massachusetts. Yep.
One of the things you discussed was trying to make inmates more productive citizens.
Mm-hmm.
With an unemployment rate at 10% officially, what makes it likely, even with training, that an employer looking for an employee is going to hire an inmate when there's so many non-inmates dying for any job they can get?
The question was, you know, how am I going to help get these inmates employed with the unemployment rate so great? How are they going to find work? I mean, I'm kind of summarizing your question. It's very difficult, and I'm not going to make light of this, you know, but the point is this: we've got to try. We've got to try here. You know, I hope you'd expect the next sheriff of Worcester County to say, one of my highest priorities is going to be trying to get productive citizens out of this jail, because we have them for a limited amount of time. There are a lot of skills that we can try to give them. First of all, 95 or 90% anyway have drug and alcohol problems. That's a given. First thing we need to do when we've got them is try to develop as many, and I know the jail has some now, but drug and alcohol programs to get them off of the dependency of drugs and alcohol, which really leads to a life of crime. That's a start. Then you have other programs that we need to try to give them. I did a tour of Sheriff Ash's jail just recently. Sheriff Ash has a business he runs out of his jail. He teaches the inmates carpentry skills, and they sell Adirondack chairs, and they sell things like picnic tables. Sheriff Ash has them doing upholstering. He has 4 or 5 different businesses run out of the jail. This is a model institution he's running. Some of these I'd like to try to implement as well as I can in Worcester County. It takes a long time to get these programs, but these inmates now have skills. So when they get out, they have carpentry skills. And you know what? If they have skills, they're going to have a better chance of getting a job than they will without those skills. And my job as sheriff would be to try as hard as I can in a very difficult environment to provide the skills to people, because it gives them a fighting chance. And we did even have some Corey reform on Beacon Hill, and I did support the idea that we need to try to give people the opportunity to be employed and not have them hung over their head like a marijuana possession charge for many, many years and make them unemployable. So we need to work with the inmates. That's part of what it is, but there's also a flip side. You know, it's not a country club in there, and believe me, you got to run that place. There's a lot of people that don't want to help themselves, and if they don't want to help themselves, I'm not going to waste my time and energy trying to help them. So there's a lot of issues. It's a good question. Thank you. Question, yeah?
How do you feel on pension? What's your take on pension?
Well, you know, I worked in the private sector until I was 41 years old, so I never really thought about a state pension. And I think, you know, people say, oh, you're a sheriff, and the idea of a pension. I honestly really haven't contemplated it. I don't anticipate retiring with a state pension. I've looked at all the money I put into Social Security, and I sure hope I don't have to walk away from that. So, you know, that's not my plan. Yes, sir.
What's the ratio for inmates to employees there?
Well, right now there's approximately 1,200 inmates, but they fluctuate dramatically. And as the previous speaker said, approximately 300 correctional officers. But there's also a number of other employees there. There's approximately 700 employees at the jail. So it depends on how you interpret a ratio. But the place was built for about 800 people. It's been in excess of that number for a long time.
So from 700 to 1,200, I mean, kids in school don't get that.
Absolutely. I'm not in any way saying they didn't. I'm just answering your question.
And I'm just saying, I'm making a statement. That sounds high.
One officer every 119 inmates someplace. That helps.
I'm just answering your question with the numbers I had. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
I'm just hoping that you'll repeat the question so we can hear.
Oh, I'm sorry. The question was, what was the ratio of employees to inmates? And I guess I'm putting the horse in front of the barn there because I kind of answered the question. But, that was it. Anyone else? I mean, I have extra time. I'm happy to take on any issues. Questions?
I have a question. It's two-part. I was under the assumption that the state rep that you get a pension for that. But you had mentioned earlier about term limits, politicians and term limits.
Yep.
Would running for a different political office, would that be a way to get around your term limits?
Well, I don't see it like that. I mean, the question was, kind of complicated, but the question I'm addressing right now is about term limits, and I believe in term limits. I always have. I've been an advocate for them, but running for a different political position is at an end run around term limits, and that's a very fair question. I can only say this to you. I have learned in my life, like hopefully all you have, that when you start a job, you really learn a lot, and you really absorb a lot, and you give a lot. And I've learned that the longer you do a job, sometimes, you know, you fall into a pattern of getting used to it. And sometimes I feel that maybe you don't do your best work after a while because you get in sort of, you fall into that routine. I don't like that routine. I've always taken on new challenges. My 20s, I traveled a lot. My 30s, I was an attorney. I was a professional attorney. My 40s, I've been a legislator. I'm ready for a new challenge. Now, if you want to say that's a transitional or against a term limit, I don't see it that way. I believe 8 years is enough. I don't want entrenched politicians. I think I'd love to offer myself to the people of Worcester County to be sheriff with my skills and background, and that's for the people to decide if I'm doing an end run. I don't see it that way, but it's a very fair question. And the young lady had a Beauvais shirt on, just so I can...
It was not a setup question.
But not a setup. It was a very fair question, actually. I was just trying to project very little humor in the end. In 30 seconds. Well, then I'm going to take... Why don't I just say this? I want to thank you for having me here. I've only touched on the surface of this, and I certainly hope I get a chance to talk to any of you, look at my website. I just believe the time is for myself to take on this challenge as sheriff. I hope I can get your support. I promise this to you. I've always taken on my jobs very seriously. I've done a good job. I've got reelected in overwhelming numbers because I did what I said I'd do. And what I told you tonight is what I'm going to do as sheriff. I'm going to be a professional. I'm not going to owe anybody a favor if I'm lucky enough to walk through those doors. These are all good people here tonight. They do deserve all your respect. I have great admiration for each of them. I just have a little bit of a different vision, I think, for the sheriff, and that's what I hope to convey in the rest of the campaign.